Well, hello and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show that I want to start with a question. Do you ever feel mentally exhausted, foggy-brained, forgetful, or like the smallest tasks, it feels like you're just trying to move through sludge? Has that ever happened for you? Just trying to get something done? Well, if you're nodding your head yes, then you are not alone, and this episode is for you, because in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down what cognitive fatigue is, how you get it, and how you can get on a healing path from it. So, before we get into it, please, if you are new to my channel, introduce yourself, say hello in the comments. We are a friendly group here. Make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell so that every Tuesday and Thursday when I roll out new episodes, you will not miss a thing. I want to say thank you also for all of your questions and your comments. I love how interactive this channel is, and I appreciate you, and I love to highlight your comments. So today I'm highlighting a comment from Robin Lynn, and the episode is Identify and Manage Abuse Enablers Part 2. And Robin Lynn says, "Oh, Miss Terri Cole, you are awesome. The way you put things, say things is spot on and also done with humor. Thanks so much for all you do. You've changed my life for the better and continue to do so. Thank you and God bless." Well, I could just flip that right around and say thank you to you, Robin Lynn, for being here, because you guys are the reason that I do all the things that I do. So let's move into today's content. So what causes that feeling of fatigue? What causes the feeling of doing a basic task, but like you just can't get it done, or you're highly distractible in a way that you aren't normally? This is called, or can be called, cognitive fatigue. So it's just tiredness, right? Sometimes we are mentally exhausted. So it's not a physical tiredness. So not to be confused with being sleepy, because really, when you are cognitively exhausted many times after you've done a full day of like heavy lifting psychologically, emotionally, mentally, that at night people report feeling wired. I have this experience where I know I'm tired, but I don't feel tired because the mental fatigue has almost created an electrical feeling in my body that I can't actually rest. So what creates this? And for clarity, this cognitive fatigue can also sometimes be related to brain injuries. But in this episode, I'm focusing basically on how we get cognitive fatigue from overfunctioning, overdoing, overthinking, basically, and what we can do about it. So when we work with our minds for a prolonged period of time, no matter what it is that you're doing, something that requires you to think, you could be writing something out, you could be figuring out a schedule because you're going to be traveling, even reading like dense material, like dense books, or maybe doing research for something. Anytime that your brain is working, you're sort of building up towards having cognitive fatigue. So what ends up happening is that when we hit a tipping point, meaning we didn't stop to rest, we didn't have ample sleep, we didn't give ourselves a mental break, when we needed it, we start to have the symptoms of cognitive fatigue. And one of those symptoms is that even basic things that you normally could do with your eyes closed feels like a heavy lift. Feels like, wow, I don't even think I can do it. Like it almost feels overwhelming to think about. Another thing that happens is that we're really distractible. When we have cognitive fatigue, when we're mentally exhausted, it's easy to just get caught up in distractions, where when you are well rested cognitively, let's say, you have an ability to stay focused on what you're doing and what's in front of you. So our capability, our ability to carry out more complex tasks becomes negatively impacted by having cognitive fatigue. And when you think about it, like if we could liken this to running a marathon or working out every day of the week for hours and hours with no break, you'd have a certain amount of physical fatigue. And if you don't listen to your body and you don't rest, usually There'll be some kind of an injury, there'll be some kind of a breakdown. So that's basically what it's like. But we don't think about our brain or our mental capacities in the same way that we think about our physical capacities, but there really is a similarity to it because our brains are always working, right? So let's talk about what creates this, because a lot of times we have a tendency to sort of minimize things that if we don't think they're important, but there's still things that we're doing. There's still things that are taking up our mental bandwidth, whether they're decisions, whether it's changing the toilet paper roll, whether it's figuring out, did you sign the kid's permission slip to do whatever they have to do? All of that stuff takes bandwidth. So what can cause cognitive fatigue? Too much decision making. Think about how many decisions you make on a daily basis. This is especially true for working moms, right? So you're like the CEO of the family, kind of keeping it going. We can also just lump emotional labor into this because what is emotional labor? It is the unpaid, most of the time, invisible work that keeps our lives going, that keeps the family boat afloat, whether that's knowing what all the kids need to do, whether that's remembering the birthdays, whether that's making the grocery list, whether that's figuring out what people are eating. This is all outside of taking care of yourself. If you happen to be a working parent as well, it's outside of work. These are all of the things that we do on a daily basis, like all day long, that are so bandwidth sucking and so incredibly exhausting. We don't even think about it though, right? Because it's stuff that just has to get done. So we do it. Because so much of the time with the emotional labor, there's a feeling that if we don't do it, no one's going to do it. And in sort of traditional gender roles, this has fallen more to the women in the world. There was an expectation. So it's kind of like when the 70s came and women started working and they could actually do something other than be like a secretary, a teacher, or a nurse. There was no like redistribution of domestic labor. So it was like, oh yeah, you can work and still do all of this other stuff that was in this patriarchal system considered women's work, quote unquote. Now listen, I'm not saying any of you are in relationships like that. I'm not saying this is what's happening in your life. I have no idea. But I am saying this traditionally is what has happened from a societal point of view. And emotional labor is no joke. It's exhausting. So it's good to understand what you're actually doing in your family system on a daily basis. And perhaps sit down. I did a whole episode on this where you could get a whiteboard and write down every single solitary thing that you do, like literally every single thing, corresponding with the schools, the teachers, the doctors, the whatever it is you're doing, and see if there can't be a more equitable split with either other adults in the home, if you're maybe a single parent. And for some of you, I know that isn't a choice. But if it is a choice, it's certainly worth looking at so you can even understand why you're so friggin' exhausted half of the time. Because if there can be a redistribution of some of that, and even for older kids, they can take on some of the labor that keeps the house going, so it isn't only you. Other things that create cognitive fatigue are sustained work on tasks that are daunting, that require you to think, that require you to focus. But the sustained is the key. I feel like when I was writing Boundary Boss, I was most definitely cognitively fatigued, even though I worked incredibly hard to not be, because I knew I had to finish the book. But I'm blessed to be in a partnership with someone where when that person slammed, the other person picks up the slack. But in all honesty, if my husband, Victor, wasn't here and didn't do everything else, I mean, he did everything. Normally, we're pretty equitable as to how the house runs and who does what. Whoever has better skills, I plan our travel. He does most of the food shopping. We both cook. And he cooks more than me, though, for sure. I do all the cleaning up. We're compatible in the way that we think about what is fair, let's say. But during that whole time, almost a year, all I did was write a book and work out. That's what I did. I mean, okay, I also took care of my mother who was diagnosed with cancer. She also moved in with us. Okay, so there was other things I did, but all of the domestic stuff, Vic literally did all of it. And I remember when I was coming out of it and promoting the book, but I still had much more bandwidth now. It was almost like Vic was in such an automatic place of doing it. I'm like, babe, you do not have to do everything anymore. And I super appreciate you doing it, but I can clean up now. I can do the things. Of course, that was a while ago, and now we're back to the way it was in a healthy way. But that is, in a healthy relationship, you can sort of pick up the slack for each other, and there isn't an expectation that one person should do all of the emotional labor to keep the ship running, because it's unfair and it's exhausting. Other things that create this cognitive fatigue, having no real mental breaks. Like not giving yourself a break in life. And listen, how do you know if you have this? You might be really irritable. That's one thing. Tasks that normally are easy for you, you feel like you just can't even get through them. You might be exhausted but feel wired, the way that I was describing that I experience when I have cognitive fatigue. You're just beat. You just feel like you can never get rested. And that is one of the telltale symptoms of having cognitive fatigue. So what can you do? Well, let's start with, you can acknowledge that cognitive fatigue is absolutely real. So there's nothing wrong with you if you're feeling that way, if you're having that experience. And I hope that for many of you, this is the aha moment and you realize that really nothing's wrong with you. You just need to make some changes in your life. But there's only so long that we can go full throttle, just all of our energy pouring out without doing something to restore. We can't do it forever. And it's interesting. I noticed in my 20s and 30s, I could certainly do it for way, way, way longer than I can do it now. But when I feel cognitive fatigue now, which I still get at different points, I know I have to stop. I know I need to start building in mental breaks throughout the day. So that can be the first step. It's not hard. They don't have to be for that long. Get up, make a cup of tea, give yourself 15 minutes to do nothing. Read People magazine. Do something that is not taxing your brain. Because I think a lot of us, we've been conditioned, this hustle culture isn't always for our highest good. Because we can't always be on. So if you have some breaks throughout your day, and also there has to be a beginning of work time and end of work time, even if you are an entrepreneur. Statistics told us that after the pandemic, many people were working at home. Corporations had all this fear. People working at home, productivity is going to plummet. That is not what happened. So they found that people actually worked more when they were working from home, people who traditionally were in an office setting. Because part of it is you can just, I'm just going to check my email one last time before I go to bed. So we really need to get clear about a work schedule and stick to it. If you work from home, if you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. There still must be an end to your workday. And it can't be 5 minutes before you're trying to go to sleep, because you need that expansive time to wind down, to rest your brain, but also to wind down your body from whatever it is that you are doing throughout the day. So a schedule, taking breaks throughout the day. Another thing is, don't overschedule. How many of you feel like you are scheduled within an inch of your life? It is not helpful. Build in ample time to do the tasks that require a lot of your brain. And then build in 15 minutes or 20 minutes after that. That's where you can build in one of your breaks. Overscheduling is literally just a one-way ticket to cognitive fatigue, which we don't want. Stop multitasking. We all know this very famous study that was done, and if you don't, I'll tell you about it. It was people, I believe it was at Yale or at Harvard, where these students who were highly functioning, very, very smart, high intellects, high IQ, they all thought that they could multitask. And what the data from the results showed was that you're just doing more things, but you're doing it 30% less well. Multitasking is not a function of how high your IQ is. Sticking to one task at a time will create less cognitive fatigue. So we want to do that. And I think that the real key is going to be dialing into your body. How do you feel? If you feel like you are walking through sludge, if you're having difficulty concentrating, if you're more forgetful than usual, if you are easily irritated, tasks that should be simple aren't. You feel like you just can't do it. You also might be feeling this physically. You might get tension headaches, feel constricted muscles. Your heart might be beating faster and you might be feeling those signs of anxiety. Again, this could be from cognitive fatigue and just exhaustion. And another thing is the fogginess, sort of feeling disconnected, almost like you're floating through, but you don't feel present to what you're doing. All of those things are an indication that you need to change what you're doing in your life, have better self-care, have better boundaries, really internal boundaries, right? Boundaries with yourself, better time boundaries, beginning work, ending work, taking breaks. All of those things combined will help you create mental expansion, but also mental resiliency, which is really what we're looking for. And that is the opposite of cognitive fatigue, is cognitive resiliency. But it doesn't just happen. It's the same way. You can't force your body to run a marathon 7 days in a row. It just won't. It will break down. This is the same exact thing. So if you want to enjoy what you're doing more, build in some time to rest, relax, restore your brain, because it is so important. And when you don't, everything starts to feel like you're just checking a box. It's just on your to-do list, which that is no way to sort of trudge through life, right? Right. Okay, so I hope that this episode added value to your life. I hope you're going to try some of these things. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What are your thoughts? Do you have this experience? What do you do to combat cognitive fatigue? And I would love to hear from you on Instagram or right here in the comments. And I hope you guys have an amazing week, taking mental breaks when you need them. And as always, take care of you.